All right, good evening. We're going to call to order the Tuesday, November 19th meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Casissa?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas? Here. Vice Mayor Ravazio? Here. Mayor Beckman?
Here. Please join me in the salute to the flag. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. We're going to have open time for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items that are not on tonight's agenda. Members of the public will be given 3 minutes apiece. Is there anybody in person here tonight who would like to make public comment for open time? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's George Topper. I'm a longtime resident of Mariner Cove, and I'm looking for help and guidance on things. There are permit challenges that we are faced with, and I was looking into doing some work on my sewer lateral, which I don't have to do, but I'm saying, well, maybe it's time to do it. So as I read what's printed on the website, which is confusing and conflicting, when I talk to people, and I've contacted 4 people at the town, I get different answers, and those answers can have an impact of, $10,000, $12,000 difference on what something might cost. One person says you can do this, the other person says you can't do that. And I'm wondering why, as a resident, there isn't someone who can say, tell us what you want to do, we'll look at it, and then when I go out and get bids, the people who are bidding will be able to give me a bid based on what I want and what's needed and not come back with a surprise, which tends to happen. And as I say, some people, when I've spoken to them and I send them a follow-up email, I don't hear anything. So what do you suggest I do?
Thank you.
And I realize at public time, you don't have to make a decision or respond. I understand that, but perhaps you will.
Thank you very much. We're going to complete taking public comment, then we're going to ask staff to follow up with you after the meeting.
Which staff member might that be?
That'll be Public Works Director RJ Suko.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have no further in-person public comment. Lorena, do we have any hands up on Zoom for open time?
We have a hand raised from Jim Andrews.
Excellent.
Hello. Yes, I got a phone call from someone in a neighboring community about the Central Marin Sanitation District in San Rafael, and I was wondering what exactly is going on with that. What I was told is that San Rafael was basically discharging all their sanitation employees, and Central Marin was going to then hire them all. And I'm just wondering, is that a reorganization of our JPA, and who on our town council and or our sewer district 2 board signed off on it? That's my question.
Thank you very much, Jim. I'll be happy to follow up with you myself after the meeting. I've been working on that issue. Do we have any hands up in addition to that, Lorena?
No additional hands raised or emailed public comment for open time.
Okay, thank you very much. So that concludes open time. We have no presentations tonight. We'll move on to our consent calendar. These are items that are routine or have been previously discussed and do not require further discussion. Any member of the council or public may pull a consent calendar item for discussion. Would any council members like to pull a consent calendar item? Seeing none, we'll open this up for public comment. If any members of the public would like to pull a consent calendar item, please go ahead and raise your hand. If you're joining us via Zoom, we don't have anybody in person wishing to pull a consent calendar item. Do you have any hands up on Zoom?
No hands raised on Zoom and no emailed public comments
Alrighty.
from anyone.
Thank you. We'll bring the consent calendar back to the council for a motion.
I'll make the motion to move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay. Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ravazio?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our first public hearing of the night, which is item 5A. This is related to speed limits changing the municipal code to reduce speed limits in town, and I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor Beckman and council members. I'm going to start a presentation, so just bear with me for a minute. All right. Hey, so this item is to consider adopting ordinance changes in consideration of Assembly Bill 43, which really has to do with speed limits in California. Assembly Bill 43 was signed into California law in October 2021. It was designed to what I would call correct some unintended consequences of how speed limits were set previously using this 85th percentile rule, which we'll get to. And those provisions that were in that Senate bill that are related to the California Vehicle Code went into effect on July 1, 2024. And so this really triggered staff evaluating our speed limits. We started this process in early 2024 and have now kind of done some engineering traffic surveys and analysis of our speed limits and have some recommendations for council. So here's a map showing Corte Madera and a lot of the segments that we evaluate on a regular basis to set our speed limits. Here's a quick table of contents or agenda of how we're going to discuss today. This is speed limit basics, AB 43 provisions, and then just kind of some things that have been happening in the news that we think are relevant for this discussion here with council, and then managing vehicle speeds. So this data set was pulled from the Vision Zero San Francisco 2-year action strategy from 2015. They were able to show that there is a connection, a direct connection between vehicle speeds and the potential for survival in an accident. And, you know, to no surprise, the faster you go, your chances reduce of surviving. And, you know, I think what is pretty compelling here is that, you know, even at 20, 30, 40 miles an hour, there is still some, you know, real risk here. So speed limits, you know, can play a big role in you know, increasing our safety, reducing our fatalities. And so we wanted to really understand how we could implement some of that here in Corte Madera. So generally, speed limits are here to advise drivers of maximum reasonable and safe driving speeds, provide a legal basis for adjudication, and they are responsibility of state and local governments. Methods for setting speed are 85th percentile, optimization, and injury minimization. So in general statutory speed limits are 55 miles an hour on 2-lane undivided road, or we follow the prima facie 25 mile per hour in residential and business areas. And so essentially what that means is in lieu of a more detailed engineering and traffic survey, that would be your kind of de facto speed limit. Once we do an engineering traffic survey, that brings into account, you know, more detail, more analysis, and we then will follow the 85th percentile to set our baseline speed. So it's a 85th percentile median statistic, and so really you're trying to determine what is the kind of the essentially the common flow of traffic is somewhat how the 85th percentile results in. It drops out the top 15% vehicles that are going the fastest. And I think as a one-time scenario, I think there's a lot of validity there and it makes a lot of sense. But I think what California has recognized that over the years, through various cycles of more and more engineering traffic surveys, it has led to what we call speed creep. So you conduct an engineering traffic survey, which is determined by the 50% fastest vehicle, speed limits raised. There are some potential safety trade-offs, and then you do it again based on the now higher speed limit, which then just kind of gravitates higher in general. So in using the old rules, we would use an engineering traffic survey, find out what the 85th percentile, and then we would have to round up. So if you were at 31, you'd set the speed limit to 35 unless there was another factor or basis to drop it down to 30. So that's the prior ruling. And here's kind of just some headlines on speed creep in the news. You can see it's kind of popped up all over California, Sacramento, LA, etc. And so this is not something new just to Corte Madera. So essentially, a lot of people have viewed 80th percentile as kind of being outdated, and safety goals are not being met as a result. And here are some sources that kind of cite just that and provide additional technical backup. So AB 43, it requires jurisdictions to take into account the presence of vulnerable groups, including children, seniors, persons with disabilities, and unhoused. AB 43 permits jurisdictions to reduce speed limits on roadways with high serious injury and fatality rates or with high levels of pedestrians and bicyclists. There have been no roadway modifications. AB 43 allows for keeping existing speed limits unchanged or for the returning to the immediately prior adopted speed limit. So that's really speaking to when it's near identify specific land uses, schools, etc., areas of bike ped traffic, business corridors, and then also it's accounting for correcting the vicious cycle that we discussed there, that over time it's kind of pushing speed limits up. And so it's now allowing you to go back to prior speed limit. Just an example here of how that would play out. So prior to this assembly bill, if you had a 38 mile per hour 85th percentile, you would round up. If you had criteria, you could at that time use that criteria to round it down, and that's things that the driver may have to expect that aren't necessarily apparent. So now with AB 43, it allows us to go an additional 5 miles below in this scenario, and it's or retain current adopted speed. Here's some examples of this going into action, and some of these cities celebrating the reducing of the speed limit. See this here is Palm Springs, and I think there's one from Los Angeles too. Some more headlines showing this happening in other places of California. And so now this is, what some have called the virtuous speed cycle. So it's now conducting engineering traffic surveys, having context appropriate speed, setting the speed limits context appropriate, adding traffic calming, and you have improved safety outcomes. And I see Jimmy from Parametrics is here. And so I'm going to introduce him. He's been working with us. He's part of the David Parisi team, and I'm going to have him hop on and fill in some of the gaps here on this presentation.
Thanks, RJ. apologize for being late, and you've done a fantastic job of really summarizing the way that jurisdictions are now able to assess and evaluate appropriate speed limits as a result of Assembly Bill 43, which became effective, all provisions became effective as of this summer. So I'd like to recognize the town for being really on that front edge of the spear in terms of making sure that speed limits are aligned with desired safety outcomes. If you look at the next slide here, this is a slide that summarizes a lot of interesting published literature that has been conducted on a number of cities, both throughout the US, internationally, at the advent of reducing speed limits on a citywide basis. In general, what we see are that measured vehicle speeds as an average and as an upper end of the bell curve all tend to be reduced just on the basis of reducing speed limits themselves. When combined with additional traffic calming implementation, measured vehicle speeds tend to be reduced even further. But really, the intent of a project such as this and the intent of speed limits in general are to assist with the safe and orderly vehicle traffic flow. And that verbiage, safe, in terms of our outcomes on our roadways, goes back to what RJ presented at the very beginning in terms of the outcomes of pedestrians involved in vehicle-related incidents. Really hits a strong inflection point in this band between 40 and 20 miles an hour. So reducing closer to that 20 mile an hour measured vehicle speed really allows the outcomes of crashes that do occur on our roadways to allow victims to survive those incidents. And so measurably, we see safety outcomes at the reduction of vehicle speeds to improve drastically. And then if we take a look at the next slide, this is a summary of what we've conducted for the entirety of roadways within the town that are subject to speed limits as determined by an engineering and traffic survey. We've taken a comprehensive look at all of the potential AB 43 provisions that are now in effect to see if those provisions are applicable to town roadways. We've looked at crash history, at land use and the potential and measured pedestrian and bicycle activity generation from land uses. We've looked at previous measured speeds, previous established speed limits. And as a result of this work, tonight we're proposing for 9 roadways within the town to be recommended for reduction of speed limits. These are all a recommendation for a 5 mile an hour speed limit reduction, as you can see throughout them. This just to stress a result of undertaking the standard engineering and traffic survey approach, measuring speeds, the outcomes, and having all of those speed survey sheets be stamped by our PE team as an outcome of this evaluation, which reflects the mandate from AB 43. The next slide really is a summary of this outcome. You'll see quite a number of the roadways within the town do align with general speed limit establishment of 25 mile an hour. There's a handful of roadways which would retain speed limits above 25 mile an hour. But as we remember this work in the context of improving safety outcomes, this is really in line with what we're seeing across the state, across the country. And in combination with additional roadway safety improvements and traffic calming outlays throughout the town, we hope to improve the safety outcomes in the years going forward. So I think that concludes the presentation. Thanks for the opportunity to present.
If I, and
Oh, yeah.
if I can just add as well, I mean, I think over the last couple of years, we've had various, whether it's public comment or related to other projects that we were reviewing, such as Paradise Drive. We've had a lot of public comments talking just about safety being a concern in terms of vehicle speeds. We've obviously introduced some of flashing beacons with the yellow lights and the crosswalks. Obviously, those are great, but I think we've also received as staff some comments about, people sometimes pay attention, sometimes they don't. It's a little bit, of a concern there still, just to prioritize pedestrian and bicycle safety on our roadways. And I think I'd just like to acknowledge that, using this new tool through AB 43 to be able to actually take the step and reduce some of the speed limits around on these roadways really is intended to address safety and pedestrian and bicycle safety, ensure better outcomes for those that collisions do occur. And I think it's right in line with all of the work that RJ's been doing on complete streets and trying to really, again, prioritize non-vehicular modes of travel as well around town. So it's not coming out of nowhere. I think the AB 43 gives us the tools, but this is sort of responding to a lot of the comments we've had over the last few years on a variety of different projects around town.
Great. Well, thank you, Adam. Thank you, RJ. Thank you, Jimmy. We will start with questions from council members. Any questions down here?
You have a couple. If we pass this tonight, I think it's a two-step process. And then, so what's the timeline for implementation?
Yeah, Jimmy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe once the ordinance passes, we need to minimum wait 30 days, but we would then install the signs and there's a 30-day period where they're advisory or warning. So kind of a transition phase, and then they become in full effect. So sometime early 2025. Yeah.
And then some of these streets, they look like they tie into Larkspur. Do you know if Larkspur is doing anything? Again, it may be 25 in Corte Madera. As soon as you cross that line, now it's 30 in Larkspur. Right. Do you know if they're doing any work in this area?
Yeah, I did hear from their public works director, and they have something similar happening. And we also, in our own evaluation, did kind of look at, hey, let's not create speed traps and have 25 and then 30 and then 25. And so that was all part of our efforts.
Okay. And then what kind of marketing efforts are going to be around this? Because that's going to be probably the big item, especially I know on San Clemente.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we can use all of our social media platforms, and we're open to certainly any other suggestions that we think we need to. If we need to go above and beyond, we can go in that direction if the council feels that's necessary. So yeah, looking for any direction on that would be great.
Okay. And I know on San Clemente, there's one of those speed detection boxes. Are there any plans to put any of those anyplace else in town?
Not currently at the moment. We've been able to, I think, address most of the other ones through striping and other traffic calming measures. But certainly that is one tool that can be used. But at this moment, I'm not aware of one where we're considering that.
Okay. And then just one last question, which is probably the big ticket one. It looks like Central Marin Police is okay with this. What about the enforcement aspect? Because I know he's short police officers. And to me, it's a behavioral thing when you try to change speed limits and lower them. Yeah.
So they were part of our meeting group when we had some draft data, and we included Central Marin PD, and they're supportive of it. They obviously, and it is, as far as we know, enforceable because these are legal speed limits, but really until they're tested in court, there's still some uncertainty exactly how that will play out. So
I'm not sure what you mean by testing in court, because if we have a posted speed limit of 25 and they catch somebody going 35, they're getting a ticket and it's going to court, right?
And I'm not a lawyer, but I think oftentimes in traffic court, they compare it to safe speed. And maybe Jimmy, you want to I don't know. You understand this one better. You want to jump in here?
Sure. I think we've seen two dynamics in terms of court enforcement and adjudication of tickets. One is a basic one. AB 43 is a very nascent provision. And so the court's coming up to speed in terms of how to ensure that determined and established speed limits are in accordance with the law. I think in Marin County, we're just coming over that hump. And the second kind of comes down to an established speed limit in comparison with an 85th percentile. There's kind of an unspoken understanding that X number of miles an hour over a speed limit sometimes is permissible. Generally, in the court of law, driving behavior has to be determined as reckless and endangering others in order to enforce citations. And so I think that's what RJ is referring to is 4 miles an hour. It's ticketable as per the state of law, but is that something that the court upholds? And kind of where is that 3, 4, 5 mile an hour over the speed limit? Where does that stand typically in the county court?
All right, thanks.
Councilmember Cassis, I don't know if you were referring just to the staffing levels that we heard from Chief Norton a couple months ago. Obviously, that's still an issue that hasn't yet changed. We're hopeful that, as he talked about, starting next year, we'll get staffed up and can restaff that traffic division that will be solely focused on sort of policing speeds in town. Until that time, I'll certainly reach out to Chief Norton and ask that, especially on certain road segments where typically people are used to driving a certain speed. You're right, it is a behavioral thing, I think, and they're going to need to be out there at least at the beginning to sort of make sure that people are aware of the speed limits and that they aren't blasting over, several miles an hour over it. But it's not, I think, just given where we are right now, you're not going to see like a full on a robust or sort of, you just don't have the staff capacity to sort of sit there on certain sections, watch the speeds.
And we'll also put out, we haven't decided exactly what it will be, but something, whether it's, the kind of reflective flags above the sign for 30 days. So it kind of shows that there's a change coming, or whether it's change of condition, speed limit signs for 30 days, but that will be out there, which I think will probably be more effective than any other marketing strategy because people are just driving by it every day for 30 days potentially.
Yeah, I have a couple other ideas, but I'll do them under comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred. Pat, any questions?
Just one question. So I travel these roads a lot, and I think you've chosen almost all of the really best ones, but there's one additional street that I hear about a lot, and I'm not sure what the current speed limit is, but I know that because it's a straight downhill stretch, people go too fast, and that's Sausalito between Buena Vista and Tamalpais. And there's no sidewalks, or not many sidewalks along there. So it's really tricky for pedestrians, enough that not many use it. But can you just talk about that street and?
Yeah, so that one, as well as San Clemente, they have a speed radar sign on it. That sometimes can be effective, but I think over the long term, people can, get used to it and kind of not pay attention. In general, historically, and this is common, I think, in most agencies, we don't do engineering traffic studies for every road segment. We kind of focus on collectors. Really, the one exception that we folded in there was the Altaway, given kind of what we've heard in recent months. So we haven't done an engineering traffic study for Sausalito. That is an option.
Is it currently 30 or currently 25?
It's 25 prima facie, which is the default for a residential. Right. Yeah.
So it is already 25. It's not. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Mm-mm.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Rosa?
Just one question about the time from when the new speed limit is supposed to be enforced by the law and the time when the signs go in, will that happen at the same time
So minimum 30 day, minimum 30 days.
after? it
Yeah.
goes-
So we can't, for the first 30 days, the sign's up, that we can't issue it a ticket. So
But you have some leeway about when the signs go up, or do the signs have to exist first?
Right.
Within.
So we would wait 30 days after the second reading and the ordinance passes
Okay.
before we consider or schedule installing the sign. And then once the sign's up, we would also wait another 30 days before we make it in full effect and issue tickets.
And I don't know why I'm thinking this happened or had seen it in the past, that when a speed limit changes, people who get some kind of something in the mail.
Jimmy, are you familiar with that?
The remark was that there's a mailer sent out about speed limit changes.
Is that a common, or are you aware of when a speed limit change has gone out that there's any sort of requirement to send a mailer or anything?
There's not a requirement to send a mailer. The requirement is, as RJ, you've described, that warnings can be issued for the first 30 days after speed limits have been posted. And then 30 days after speed limit posting, then the speed limits are enforceable in the court of law. We do see precisely what RJ describes as a very common outlay for newly established speed limits, either a sign in yellow that is adjoined to the speed limit sign saying new, or other flags that indicate that it's a newly established speed limit. We don't typically see mailers being issued. I'm not familiar of any cases of this. Typically, the thought process behind signage posting is that the speed limits that are going to be applicable to those motorists on those roadways will be observed within that 30-day period, and that's serving in itself as a notification of the update.
You, Charles.
All right, I have a much different question. My car regulates itself when it's driving as far as the miles per hour, and it's a tolerance above that I may or may not allow it to do. What's the process of updating the databases that will basically affect these types of cars and the information? Do we do that directly? And then what's the timing on that?
I'm aware of what you're saying. I don't know how they update them on their end. Jimmy, you're aware of anything, some database that we report to? I don't think there is one, but through Google Earth and driving around and
A previous car of mine in San Francisco with the Premiere, it actually knows the timing of the lights and stuff. It'll actually tell you when you see the countdown, it'll tell you you got 26 seconds. It did it as a heads up on the window. So there's definitely services and stuff. I just didn't know if it was statewide or individual, but I can tell you that I may observe a sign, but my car needs to observe it as well at this point, and many others. So good to know how to do that.
anything to add on that, Jimmy?
As far as we know, there's not a publicly accessible database. And I do hear this comment a lot, both in terms of routing or addresses or other map infused data. And I don't know, I can't speak for exactly how tech companies build information into their systems that are then available for users of specific products, but it's not via a publicly available clearinghouse.
Huh. Interesting. I would imagine
Fred, you had one more question?
Yeah, one other question. On the survey that you guys conducted, did you factor in any Central Marin Police data as far as where they're issuing tickets? Because I know they give us stats on that once a year. I don't know if any of that data was factored in. Oh,
Go ahead, Jimmy. It's a pretty specific process, but go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, that's a great question. The California Vehicle Code is quite specific on what does need to be accounted for in an engineering and traffic study, and that is really brings an emphasis on historical crash data. That is a lagging indicator, so to speak, of observed speeds. And so what the vehicle code tries to do to address that is to measure vehicle speeds. So it's seen as the combination of crash history and measured speeds, along with an evaluation of the roadway characteristics and other physical aspects and surrounding land uses, is what typically goes into an engineering and traffic survey. In this case, we did correlate our findings with the Central Marin Police Department. We did not also integrate issuance and citations into that. And part of that is due to the targeted enforcement efforts, which isn't necessarily spread equally amongst all roadway segments within town. So coordinating with police departments on their understanding and how they interpret their enforcement efforts is what we built into this project.
thanks.
And there's also protocols and procedures around when you take an engineering traffic survey, you're not taking it in the peak during congestion and all those things. There's a whole kind of playbook for that.
Or during the holiday season.
Sounds good. Thank you. I've just got one question. For these 9 segments that we're looking at, when were these speed limits last raised to their present levels?
The last speed survey that we did was in 2019, but I don't know which of those were raised. I actually don't think I was involved in the last process, and I think only 1 or 2 changes occurred between the previous set of speed surveys in 2019. So in all likelihood, 8+ years.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Maybe I can just comment on that really quickly. There was one segment, Casa Buena Drive, closest to Tamalpais, that was raised from 25 to 30 in the 2019 engineering and traffic surveys.
That is very good to know. Thank you. All right, that concludes questions from the council. So we're going to open this up for public comment. Any members of the public who would like to comment on this item, if you're with us via Zoom, please go ahead and raise your hand. We don't have anybody in person wishing to make public comment. Do we have any hands up on Zoom for public comment?
We have 3 hands. Before I start though, we did receive 2 public comments via email prior to the start of this meeting, and they were uploaded to the website earlier and shared with the council and are available to the public. And from the hands raised, we'll start with Roy Wolford.
Great.
Good evening. Major piece of information is missing. I read through the documentation provided. Where's the information on traffic incidents? How many people have been, how many deaths, how many physical injuries, collision, property damage, etc. There was also a talk about tickets being issued. That's important information to know in order to understand why speed limits may be dropping. San Clemente at one time had a speed limit of 45. The assertion was made in the presentation that there's speed limits are constantly creeping up. There's 20 streets, it looks like, were done in this current study for the prima facie speed limits. And only 1 in 5 years has a street or the speed limit been raised on 1 street. So I looked at San Clemente. Fred mentioned San Clemente drives, and I just mentioned it 45. It's 35 now. The 85th percentile determined that the speed limit or the speed was 37 miles per hour, but the proposed speed limit is being lowered to 30 miles per hour. And this is the case for 7 other streets. 10 streets have a higher 85th percentile, and the speed limit did not change. Only 3 followed that formula. So why isn't the actual data for incidents and safety? I mean, we're talking safety here. We all want safe streets and we don't want people to get injured. But this is going through the same process that the whole climate change and the sea level rise, where not all the information is being provided, or what's being provided is not accurate. There was a mention too about receiving complaints about speed limits. One of the council members mentioned it. And that's valuable information to know. Who's complaining and about what? And that would determine the speed limit. I don't see any reason to lower the speed limit on San Clemente Drive unless there's actual factual data that shows that there's a lot of accidents. The other thing is I do a lot of walking, particularly on the shared bike paths, multi-purpose bike paths, and I walk maybe 4 or 5 miles an hour. And most bikers are good, but some of them whip past, no warning or anything else, come up from behind, got to be doing at least 15 plus miles per hour. That's 3 times faster than I'm walking. And e-bikes can be doing 20 miles per hour or faster. So there's a real concern there about the differentials in speed. And that's a real problem with accidents, is speed differential on the roadways and now on the multi-use paths. So I hope the council puts as much emphasis on the bike paths as the roadways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roy.
Okay, next we have Warren Wells.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. This is Warren Wells, Policy and Plan Director for the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. I just wanted to call and express my support and appreciation for staff in their hard work on this. As we know, there is a roadway safety crisis in the United States. The past several years have seen over 40,000 people dying on American streets and roads each year. And unfortunately, Marin is no outlier there. We have seen an increase here. And I was fortunate enough to participate in our county's local road safety plan last year that did commit every city in the county to a goal of trying to reach 0 serious and fatal traffic collisions by the year 2050. So this is an important step. And I just want to, obviously I work for the Bicycle Coalition, but most of the people being injured and dying in traffic collisions are doing so as drivers or passengers of automobiles. And when we lower those maximum speeds, it just means that when a collision does occur, and they're less likely to occur in the first place, but when they do occur, it's less likely that someone will be injured severely. So again, we're looking to keep everyone moving around, at a safe pace and keeping those high speeds for freeways where there aren't objects, there aren't pedestrians, there aren't bicyclists, and the roads are designed for higher speeds. So again, I really appreciate the work being done here and thank the council for their consideration. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
And then last we have Jim Andrews.
Yes, I would just make a suggestion, which is when you're putting up signs notifying of the speed limit, at the town borders and at the various freeway exits, just put up a sign that says town speed limit 25 miles an hour unless posted. So that if anybody has a question, they immediately think, okay, the speed limit's 25 miles an hour. Because as we noticed in this meeting already, there was questions about what the speed limit on Sausalito was. Okay, and there's lots of other, towns, parts of town where folks really aren't certain what speed they should be going at. And I know for years in residential areas, it's been 25, but that's not commonly posted anywhere. So, who remembers that? Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Any other hands up, Lorena?
No additional hands raised or emailed public comment.
Okay, so we're going to close public comment and bring this item back to council for discussion and a possible vote to introduce here. But I'd like to start by asking staff to respond to the question we received from a member of the public about traffic safety data.
Yeah, and I think Jimmy touched on it during his presentation a little bit, but if you could elaborate, Jimmy, on how accident and incident data was factored into the analysis, that'd be great.
Indeed, thanks. Appendix B of the item staff report does include all the engineering and traffic survey sheets. There's collision data information that's listed on each of those that are part of the evaluation and eventually stamped by a professional engineer on our team. There's also more information that goes behind the numbers that are displayed on the sheets themselves. I appreciate the question, but all of the crash history that results in all levels of severity in terms of outcome for crash victims are accounted for as part of the evaluation as required by the California Vehicle Code.
Right, thank you very much. We will now take comments from council members. Who'd like to start us off? Go ahead.
So while my car's driving itself, I have a lot of time to look at data. And one of the data I've noticed is if you're given the opportunity to go 65, but it decides to go 55, the end time in which I get there almost stays the same. And I think that's because of other factors other than the perceived motion in that time, because it's not linear. It isn't a continuous speed. You stop at stoplights, you get behind people, you do all these different things, but in the aggregate, you get there at the same time. Even if you get there 10 seconds, 15 seconds later, but you felt like you were going fast, right? Like there's this perception that the actual faster speed limit like actually flows better. But what I have found is in good communities, traffic almost grinds to a halt. The most desirable communities I know, the downtown Larkspur, the Capitola, it's like on a good weekend, you're going 2 miles an hour and you're happy about it, right? You stop, you see the community, right? You see people. And, I think that's what I love about Corte Madera with my kid. Well, we have so many great walking paths and everything. This is a community. People aren't driving through it to go somewhere else. This is the destination. If they happen to have to drive through the community, they should respect how we want to live. And so reduction of it across the board, I can only see benefit to what I truly believe would make a better and safer environment for families and just general people at all levels. So I'm comfortable with it. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Rosa.
I concur. I think that we are, there's always that 5-mile leeway on one side or the other. So I think that starting, with a sort of a town standard of 25 miles an hour as the population of Corte Madera gets older and younger at the same time, there's just kids everywhere. I think it's a positive thing. So I support it.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. I strongly support this. I have been hearing from people for many years about near misses, especially on Tamalpais in front of the park and Neil Cummins School. And also on the other side, where cars keep crashing through the fence on where Paradise meets San Clemente. I think we figured that out, that what happens is the light turns red and the cars are going so fast they can't see the red light coming. All they see is a car that they would rear end unless they jumped up on the sidewalk. So I'm pretty sure that slowing those cars down will really help. And to the concern about, they keep getting slower and slower, keep in mind that people kind of know that they're not going to get a ticket if they're just going 5 or 10 miles even over the speed limit. So on San Clemente, I've seen cars go 50 without worrying too much about anything. So lowering them a little bit will at least, make their excessive speeds come down a little bit. And I don't know whether we have our statistics in line for bike accidents, but when I've been at Marin Health on bike accidents, I've been told that they are the bread and butter of that hospital. And if it weren't for bike accidents, there wouldn't be nearly enough revenue coming in. So let's get that revenue down and get the bike accidents under control. So I'm fully supportive of this. And I thank RJ. I remember I asked you for one street. I said Tamalpais needs to be 25. And the next thing I see is a complete solution. Well, not complete, but fairly complete, and really appreciate the comprehensive way you approach things. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Fred?
Yeah, I can support this also. I'm all in favor of anything related to public safety. I just have one concern again, is just the behavioral aspect, which that's something that we can't individually change. So to me, again, I know there's an enforcement part to this. I know CMPA is short, and I don't expect them to be on every single street all the time. It's just, I think we just have to be aware of that, especially I know on San Clemente, even though we're dropping at 5, I can still see the speeds increase on that. Couple that with, I just think you should look at a comprehensive marketing plan that covers a multitude of things. And that's everything from notifying like the schools and getting maybe in parent packages. I know that you do, I don't know what they're called, the road signs like you have on San Clemente now saying Madera del Presidio is closed, that type of stuff. I like the idea about somehow when you change those signs to put something extra on them so people are paying more attention. I just think it needs to be, instead of doing the usual stuff, which is, the digital board, chronicles, I think there's just needs to be more than just that kind of stuff. And then just one last thing, maybe more of a work plan item for next year. But one thing that would be interesting, if we did a survey of our own residents, asking them what streets they thought were like dangerous for pedestrians. I think that would be great feedback from our residents, and that would be a telltale sign above and beyond what Preci did. So above that, I can support this. Thanks.
Thank you. Great comments all around. I tend to agree. I think like all of us, I've lived here long enough that I've unfortunately seen collisions occur. I've seen injuries happen. And of course, our goal as public officials is always to try and make living in Corte Madera as safe as it can possibly be. So this seems like a great step in that direction. And I did think it was really noteworthy. And I appreciate RJ including in the presentation the data on how speed affects how likely a collision is, how deadly a collision is likely to be. And I thought it was really striking that the 10-mile-an-hour difference between 20 and 30 miles an hour makes a crash 4 times as deadly. That is really shocking. So with respect to that, lowering speed limits below 30 miles an hour would seem like a solid step forward to reducing the likelihood of fatal collisions in Corte Madera. So I'm happy to support that. And with that, I would invite any council member to make a motion to introduce.
I will move that we introduce ordinance number, where are we here?
Doesn't have a number yet.
Doesn't have a number yet, dated 1060.010 and 1060.020 of the Corte Madera Municipal Code to reflect reduced speed limits for 9 roadway segments in Corte Madera based on engineering and traffic surveys.
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ravazio?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, RJ. Thank you, Jimmy.
Great work, RJ.
All right, we're going to move on to item 5B here, which is consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 40/2024, amending the public safety and hazards element of our general plan. And I will turn it over to Amy.
Yes, thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Beckman, members of the council. Tonight is a somewhat more technical item for you. And this is really related to our general plan safety element and our multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, and just making sure the two are connected. And Lorena, thanks for sharing my slides. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background, the safety element is one of the required elements in our general plan, and it's one of the few that's actually required to be updated periodically. So your council actually updated this a couple years ago, and at the same time as the housing element. The multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan takes our safety element and goes one step further. It's not actually required by state law, but it is required if you seek out any funding related to grants for safety-related improvements and also for any disaster recovery work. So most jurisdictions have this. We're lucky enough to have been part of a multi-jurisdictional effort that was led by the County of Marin. And so your council adopted this back in January of this year. And the County Office of Emergency Management notified us that there is an Assembly Bill 2140 that actually requires the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan to be incorporated by reference explicitly within the safety element. So that is what we're hoping you do tonight, is to marry the two together in this way. Next slide, please. So this is just showing the extent of what changes we're asking you to make tonight. This is in your packet, but it is just one page. And so you have the benefit of having the full element in your packet in case you would ever like to look back at that. But this is a very minor change to the safety element itself. Next slide. And we've determined that this is it is subject to CEQA, but we have determined that this is in keeping with the previous CEQA document that was done for the safety element. And so we have those findings in your resolution for tonight. Next slide, please. And so our recommendation is that you take the recommendation of the Planning Commission and adopt a resolution tonight to amend our safety element to incorporate the hazard mitigation plan. And I'm here for questions if you have any.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy, for the concise report. Much appreciated. We will take questions from council members. We'll start on my left. No questions. No questions.
I just have one simple question because I read the stuff. In the general plan, it mentions disaster council. Do we still have the disaster council, or is that like, I couldn't remember what we did with that.
So we have it sort of morphed into the Twin Cities Disaster Council. Is that
Okay.
what you're referencing? And so, yes, we do. That still is an entity that is, we have a liaison, an appointee that gets appointed to that every year. So, but I will say previously, and this is, I'll get to this in my report, but previously we had a town specific disaster council prior to the merging basically our fire departments. So that's, I think, around 2018 at the time CMFA was born. The effort was made to sort of switch the town's disaster council into a city's disaster council, give the shared services.
Okay.
And please.
Okay, thanks. I guess this just still references the town one. So, okay, thanks.
It's a 2009 general plan. So at some point here, we
All right.
will update that entire document. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I have no questions either, so we'll open this up for public comment. Any members of the public who would like to comment on this item via Zoom, please go ahead and raise your hand. Do we have any hands up via Zoom?
Yes, we have Roy Wolford and Jim Andrews. We'll start with Roy, who's first.
Okay.
Okay, good evening again. I guess we have the dynamic duo going on here. What specific actions have been taken and will be taken to address unreasonable risk associated with the effects of seismically induced surface ruptures, ground shaking, ground failure, mudslides and landslides, subsidence, liquefaction, and other seismic hazards and geologic hazards? That's my question.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Take our other public comment.
Jim, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yes, I would recommend adding an an additional amendment, and I arbitrarily called it PSH 2.4.c, and I think it should read something like, for private driveways supporting multiple domiciles, Planning Department shall strictly enforce the fire road access requirements for developments that increase densification along the private road, which means, according to the state requirements, 2 entrances / exits and a 20-foot travel way. So, otherwise we've got a few relatively high dense driveways with multiple houses on there that if fire trucks need to get up, cars can't get out. So it's going to be just a big bottleneck and it could cause a tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other hands up, Lorena?
No additional hands raised or emailed public comment.
Okay, thank you. So we'll close public comment and bring this item back to the council. And I will just ask staff, I'm not sure the extent to which either of those public comments was related to the particular matter at hand, which is marrying the existing safety element and the multi-jurisdictional local hazard mitigation plan. So I would ask you to respond to any of those comments that you felt were germane to the matter at hand. And then for any suggestions or questions that we just received that are not related to tonight's discussion, if we could just take those under advisory for future work on the safety element and the general plan, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to respond. So the first question was really about what actions have been taken. And I will say that we have had a requirement for a safety element previous to this element that we have that was adopted in 2009 and recently updated. So there have been a lot of changes that have happened, mostly through building code and other means. So, but I would invite Roy to look at the hazard mitigation plan because that really lays out the specific mitigations associated with those specific hazards. So it's really particular and it's actually aligned with a lot of other goals of the other jurisdictions, including Marin County, and keeps us eligible for grant funding related to those hazards. On the other matter, I would say that the general plan is updated periodically, and there are other goals and things that need to be updated. And that is one thing that can be reviewed when we have a more comprehensive opportunity to look at the safety element, because that touches obviously a lot of other pieces of policy related to how we develop property in town.
Great. Thank you very much. With that, we'll just take any further thoughts from council members. Otherwise, happy to take a motion to adopt the resolution.
I can go ahead and make a motion to adopt resolution 40/2024, amending the public safety and hazardous elements of the Corte Madera general plan to recognize the adoption of the 2024 Marin County multi-jurisdictional local hazard mitigation plan in town of Corte Madera annex.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ravazio?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it. That concludes our public hearings for tonight. We'll move on to our only business item, which is 6A, consideration and possible authorization to the town manager to execute a 3-year contract with a new HR consultant for $405,000 over the 3 years. I will turn it over to staff.
Great. And I'm going to sort of provide some context and then turn it over to Rebecca, who's really done the bulk of the work on this. So first off, just thanks to Rebecca for really delivering a sort of a very good process and helping us get to this point in selecting CPS HR Consulting as our preferred candidate for providing these human resources services for the town. But I want to start with why we're here tonight, and that's really a somewhat bittersweet moment of sort of recognizing the work that Janet Thiessen has done for the town over the last 5 years. Since about 2018, Janet Thiessen has served as our human resources manager. She has also served as the human resources manager for 3 other agencies, including fire, police, and the city of Larkspur. And so just want to recognize the real great work that she's done for not only the town, but CMPA, CMFA, and also the city of Larkspur as well. And she has notified us, she will be retiring, well-deserved retirement at the end of December. So it's congratulations to Janet. She's had a great career in public service. And so just want to make sure that she's recognized there. At the same time, what's happened as this, and I also want to thank her for giving us plenty of notice to sort of work on how to maneuver and sort of reorganize around human resources. And through discussions, myself and Dan Schwartz, there sort of a natural evolution of how to take what was admittedly sort of a one position, which was really not resourced enough, in my opinion, to deal with 4 agencies and all the human resources issues that can occur, especially in public safety and hire. You're talking about hiring, you're talking about onboarding. She got us into NeoGov, which is a very much more modern way of actually bringing people and introducing people to the hiring process of the town, but also onboarding, really much more professional than when I started, for sure. Has been really effective as well in helping us deal with some employee relation issues that come up from time to time. She's up to date on all the legal issues that come up, working as well with Amy Ackerman, of course, as the laws change regularly in employment law. And so just has been a good resource. So at the same time, in thinking about this, what we decided to do is the town already provides certain payroll and benefit and certain human resources services for not only the town, of course, but our finance department, as you're aware, also provides finance services and payroll services for CMFA. Likewise, City of Larkspur does the same with CMPA. So we have sort of reorganized around the town and CMFA sort of joining forces in providing human resources services collectively to these 2 agencies. In this case, it's going to be through the town's contract, and Rebecca can highlight this a little bit, and Larkspur and CMPA will sort of collectively provide human resources services to their respective agencies. So that's just the context in which this is coming before you. And I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca really to get into the process and where we are. We're asking council's authority for.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Mayor Beckman and council. I'll start where Adam left off with a little overview of the request for qualifications and the process we followed. It started off back in August when Janet first really solidified her retirement date and met with several staff to prepare for the transition and outline the major functional areas of her role and what the town and the fire authority could plan for going forward. And based on that discussion, staff prepared a request for qualifications for human resources management services. Janet reviewed that document and fine-tuned it and made sure that what we put out for proposals was really all-encompassing. Knowing that we did handle several key components in-house, we put out a proposal that would request any and all services to see if it was possible to offload some of those items. The document was issued October 7th and was posted on the town's website and also sent directly to 12 HR consulting providers that were either recommended to staff or known by staff to provide those services to municipalities or government agencies. We really wanted to try to get resources that were experienced in municipal government. The RFQ focused on 7 primary municipal human resources needs and also the miscellaneous functions that Janet highlighted. And during the open period, staff met with 6 interested consultants who wished to learn more about the town and its current situation and what we were looking for in a provider. And ultimately, 4 proposals were received by the submittal deadline, and those were received from MRG, Much More Than Consulting, Robert Half Company, and CPS HR Consulting. Staff scheduled exploratory interviews with all 4 respondents, and the interviews were scheduled for November 6th and attended by all town department heads in the management team, the fire chief, and our current HR manager. And staff met with each provider for approximately 1 hour each. Following those interviews, staff evaluated the proposals based on public sector expertise, track record of successful municipal HR projects, alignment with town and fire authorities' needs, and flexibility and cost effectiveness. It wasn't really an apples to apples comparison. Each consultant provided different and variable proposals. So we were really focused on what would meet our needs most effectively. And CPS HR was ultimately selected as the front runner. It has a strong public sector focus, proven experience, ability to seamlessly integrate with the town and fire authority operations. Staff invited CPS HR to participate in a secondary discussion last week on November 13th. And that was held with the town manager, myself, the fire chief, and our current HR manager, Janet Thiessen. Staff was able to ask additional clarifying questions regarding both the town and the fire authority's needs, and talked about what a potential agreement might look like, how we could fine tune along the way, if there were potential mitigation measures, if things weren't going to the town's liking, how flexible they could be. And then CPS HR followed up with a revised proposal with proposed scope of work updated to include detailed background information on the proposed project team, additional services for the fire authority based on discussions with fire chief, and a structured communication and engagement plan reflecting the requests discussed during that meeting. So a little bit about CPS HR. They have operated since 1985. They're a JPA, a Joint Powers Authority. They specialize in public sector HR consulting. And as a JPA, it is a public entity in itself, which we feel uniquely positions them to understand and address the challenges faced by municipal governments. And it allows CPS HR to deliver tailored practical solutions that align closely with public agency goals. I just wanted to read a brief excerpt from their proposal, which really struck a chord with me. They say, our mission is to advance excellence in human resources within the public sector, and our vision is to empower individuals to fulfill the ideals of public service. CPS HR's core competency lies in our in-depth knowledge and expertise in the public sector landscape. Being a public agency ourselves, we possess a deep understanding of the intricacies and issues faced by our client base. In addition to that, their understanding of municipal challenges and California-specific compliance requirements, including CalPERS and the Firefighters Bill of Rights, was of particular importance to our team as we evaluated their proposal. They're headquartered in Sacramento. They have regional offices in Texas, Colorado, and Southern California, and a team of 110 professionals dedicated to HR management, recruitment, policy compliance. They would have a deep bench of subject matter experts to both advise our assigned senior consultant or to call on for special projects or consultation if needed. Notable clients include the cities of Santa Rosa, Turlock, Novato, and Sheridan, Colorado, and the Marin Housing Authority and San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District all have similar sized engagements to what is being proposed for our 2 agencies. They have the ability to have a tailored approach. They have a proven success in delivering remote and on-site HR services customized to specific client needs, and their model translates well to remote assistance. Their project manager let me know that over 90% of their government clients are fully remote, and they have a strong retention rate for clients renewing their service contracts year after year. The highlights in their proposal include recruitment, onboarding, and retention strategies, policy development and compliance audits, labor relations, including grievance handling and union negotiations. employee wellness and professional development programs. Kristen Morris will be the project manager, and she has over 20 years of HR expertise across policy compliance and organizational studies. And Chanel Seraldi will be the senior consultant, and she was chosen for this engagement based on her strong HR generalist background and over 15 years of experience with public safety and a fire agency knowledge base. The proposal is for a 3-year engagement. And it would be capped at $405,000 over 3 years. Staff anticipates spending approximately $135,000 per year, given our need averages around 15 to 20 hours per week. The town and authority combined currently spend approximately $100,000 for HR services. And as Adam mentioned, it's anticipated that our 2 entities expect to receive more personalized and responsive service with an HR consultant shared among 2 agencies rather than split among 4. They're proposing a time and materials billing with flexibility for service level adjustments. There's no minimum weekly or monthly requirement, unlike was included in other proposals we investigated. So that allows them to be more flexible to our needs. We can grow or shrink our services depending on the need as we figure out where we are after Janet retires. The proposal customizes, has customization options. They are proposing that time spent on fire department work will be tracked separately for ease of reimbursement from the fire authority to the town. The proposal includes a provision for handling fire department recruitments and an offer to create a separate scope of work for additional tasks like assessment centers and test administration if needed for the fire authority. The remote model with on-site meetings at least annually or more frequently as needed. The senior consultant will have virtual weekly attendance at our Monday management meetings and regular check-ins with the town manager and fire chief. The project manager will also have regular check-ins with the town manager and fire chief at first to ensure that the engagement is getting off on a strong foot. There's certain transactional functions carried out by the town finance and admin staff. Among other items, new hire onboarding, benefits administration, workers' compensation, and risk management liaison through our Bay Cities JPIA, and workplace safety and training and injury and illness prevention program. The 15 to 20 hour per week estimate is based upon our staff maintaining their involvement in those functions and activities for the start. Staff will evaluate whether there's an opportunity to offload some of those items once we are actively engaged with our new HR management provider, and then we can get a sense of our regular needs. Didn't Adam cover? Oh, strong communication. They have proposed regular weekly and monthly check-ins that we've provided for in the agreement, and management team integration with our assigned senior consultant. She actually lives nearby in the Monterey Bay. So while she wouldn't come to the office regularly, she could come. It's proposed at least annually, although we may want her to come in quarterly. It has been discussed that if we approve this engagement this evening, that she would be able to come in early December and meet with our management team and our staff to have sort of on-site check-in and a kickoff on the engagement and really get to know our staff well before transitioning to the remote service. Should town council authorize the town manager to execute the agreement, the town attorney would work with staff to finalize the agreement and the contract details and scope of work with CPSHR. Our ideal timeline would be to begin the service transition in early December to ensure the seamless continuity following Janet's retirement. And Janet has expressed a strong interest in having several weeks to transition and provide information to our chosen provider. And that timeline is supported by CPS and our assigned senior consultant. think that covers everything that Adam did not. A lot more information I can provide to
Yeah.
you based on questions that you may have.
No, that's great. And I think that a couple points just to highlight for me, the flexibility is really nice to have, like whether we have we're sort of in this spot where we don't need a full-time staff person, employee. We don't, that's just, so we are looking at probably 20 hours, but it could be 30 hours on a given week. It could be 10 hours on another week. And so having that flexibility and that adaptability firm, I thought was really important. I also felt it sort of mimicked the current model we have with Janet. Janet's mostly remote right now, I will say. She can come in, and I think we would, as Rebecca said, at the beginning of this process, we would bring in Chanel, and I think there's important to be able to meet in person and build that relationship. But over time, a lot of the day-to-day can be handled remotely. So that's I think our staff felt really comfortable that they've had that relationship already with Janet. Yeah, so in any case, I think also over time, having that flexibility allows perhaps our current staff to grow into roles and ultimately take over some of these responsibilities more gradually and as they receive training. And that's not sort of doesn't block our own staff from sort of growing within the current roles, if that is something that our staff wants to go. Able to do. So all those things considered, I will also say having the 3 years allows to sort of build something without having concerns about it. It may in fact be a little bit more expenditure in the first year, just ramping up. And then hopefully the second year is less costly. And then I think third year probably will have a separate engagement as we get into contract negotiations. But I want to wait and see where we are there at that point in time. So that's just sort of why it's lumped into a 3-year relationship and the total amount without having sort of a yearly max figure.
Oh, and I also wanted to add that there are no escalators included with these rates. They stressed that these rates are locked in for the life of the 3-year.
Great. Thank you very much. And Rebecca, thanks especially for both the presentation and the staff report. They're both very thorough and well organized. So nice work. Thank you. We're going to start with questions from council members. We'll start on my right.
Thanks. Just to clarify, is there one contract with us and them? And then basically if Central Marin Fire uses them for any reason, they'll keep separate billing. So they would bill us and we would invoice Central Marin Fire? I'm trying to get understanding of how that works.
General, yes, but I think Amy, we're going to work on potentially a shared services agreement that would actually.
I think
I'll let Amy go, but I think the answer was.
You're asking very good questions, Councilmember Casissa. This is a different arrangement than what we've had in the past, and so we're trying to figure out the mechanics. It was important to have the fire chief involved in the selection of the vendor because, of course, there are special firefighters, procedural bills, rights, and all kinds of things. So I think the idea is both agencies will use the same vendor. The mechanics of how it is going to work are a little bit up in the air. I think that, I'm looking through the JPA with a fine-tooth comb, but I think, the towns does manage the finances. So, it will be separately accounted for in terms of if the service provided by the vendor is for Central Marin Fire, it will come out of Central Marin Fire's budget. If the service is for Corte Madera, it comes out of Corte Madera's budget. But whether we need a shared services agreement or Central Marin Fire needs a separate agreement with the vendor, we're working on that.
Yeah.
TBD.
Yeah, I will just say it's currently how it's done.
So I'm sorry. So the 405,000 includes both. Basically.
That is correct.
They have stressed that they will track the billing hours specifically for town and for fire. They will keep those billing hours separate.
Okay. Did you check any references with any other towns like Novato or any of the other towns that are using them currently, just to get any feedback from those towns?
Do you call them?
Process, yeah. I haven't gotten the callbacks, but yes, I've checked with actually some colleagues, not their specific references. And so through those informal reference checks, there's a thumbs up.
Okay. And then just one last question. You both feel comfortable with them because you've talked to them and interviewed them. And I assume that Chief Martin feels comfortable with them also.
I actually do. I'm actually really comfortable saying that our interactions, at least my personal interactions with the team that I've been working with for the past month during this outreach process, they're warm and engaging and receptive to questions, and they get back to you quickly. And I have had positive experiences working with them from the first time they reached out after receiving my RFP.
All right, thanks.
Great, thank you. Questions?
Yeah, just one question that arises out of my concern about remote. And when I was in big corporate America, HR was always the place down the hall where you could go and ask somebody questions or talk to them. So let's say I'm an employee and I'm having a problem and I want to keep it confidential and I need someone to talk to. Do I have a person to call, and who is that person, and how am I guaranteed that my whistleblowing or my concerns will be treated as they would if I was face to face with somebody?
Right. Thank you for that. That is a good question because we had that same question during our discussions with CPS, and our senior consultant will be that person. They will be available by email. They will be available by phone. I think they have same day callback, and they will keep confidential information confidential. They will engage the town manager or the fire chief as appropriate with anonymous concerns, or if something needs to be elevated, they will make sure that gets elevated. And in addition to that, maybe Adam can explain it a little better. We also have we also have another confidential complaint concern line. So that staff currently use and are familiar with. So that will remain
Okay.
in process as well.
Great. So at the onset, all the employees will be introduced to these people and know that that's a resource for them?
Yes, when I spoke with the CPS consultants earlier today, they did confirm that our senior consultant would be able to come on site at a mutually agreeable date in December. And our goal would be to have that be the kickoff meetings with the management staff and also introduce that person to all staff as available. Hopefully, all
Great.
staff would be available. We could potentially do it in its room and record it too, so that people could view it if they were unable to attend. But we want as many people to meet and get to know her in person as possible before proceeding with that virtual relationship.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions?
Just a quick sort of logistical question about the confidential line that you have available to Irma. How would that, or would that somehow connect with CPS? Did I say that right? CBH? Yeah, CPS. Would there be any connection between them?
Usually it is. I mean, the same way that Janet certainly is in that role today. So Irma's basically we utilize their services through our risk pool as another resource. And they do have the contact information of our human resources manager currently and would have that same contact information. So that obviously that Irma is sort of an outside resource, but at some point it's got to get connected back onto the inside. to address issues and concerns as they may come up. So that would be a CPS connection there. And I think that's what's good about also CPS. Again, they are a government, they're JPA. So they actually, their employees are using some of the same resources and are familiar with some of the same resources and how those connections need to work themselves as a JPA, and all come from the public sector. So I'm familiar with all of these acronyms and the state laws around privacy and
We want our staff to feel like they have an avenue to be heard in whatever way they're most comfortable getting that information out to us.
And to Councilmember Ravazio's point, I would just say that's also something that set this firm apart from the other firms that we compete was that they did have, the challenge was finding, could somebody provide us a dedicated person, individual, even though we were only looking at flexible, up to 20 hours, 10 hours, 30 hours a week, which is not something that each agency could provide at all. It was more, go to this person for one thing, and then you get somebody else over here for another. So that was also something that set CPS apart.
Oh, thank you for that. That also made the billing easier to understand with CPS than with others because they had a tiered structure, and they might use one person for one question and another person for another, and you couldn't get a true sense of how much it would cost you. And I think it's also important to note that while the project manager will be guiding the work product in consultation with the chief and our town manager, she also let us know that if our senior consultant is inundated in any particular week for any particular reason with their workload, and she has to step in for her, she would bill us at that lower senior consultant rate, which I thought was a good distinction.
Thank you. Good question, Charles. Any questions? And all my questions have been asked. So we'll take public comment on this item now. We don't have anyone making in-person public comment. If you're with us via Zoom and would like to make public comment, please go ahead and raise your hand and we'll bring you on here. Lorena, let me know if we see any hands go up.
No hands are raised from attendees, and we didn't receive any emailed public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you. So we will close public comment and bring this item back to the council for discussion and a possible motion. Who'd like to start us off?
I like this model. I mean, we talked similarly a couple of years ago about when we were looking at attorneys, whether we wanted to bring one in-house or kind of go out, and, it was sold to us, and I've definitely seen it. The expertise, the general experience that's shared in a broader network can really benefit in some and then hamper in others, right? Where we want dedicated personnel within the town. On this one, I see the benefit, but we still have a dedicated person that will know the nuances of these two institutions. It's not just and so that is where that model really, it works better in that kind of configuration, just like Amy is the face and the name that we always know, even though she represents a much broader body behind her work, right? And so when it comes to HR, because of all the things that were discussed, the legality, the ongoing updates to law and stuff, having an individual that's dedicated here, we might actually not get as good value from the individual over time, so and then the costs seem aligned with what we've been spending. And honestly, we're coming out of basically, we've really enhanced a lot of HR and recruitment and really filled in a lot of those roles and stuff. So even more so, it's more standard as she goes moving forward. So hopefully that also helps in just kind of utilizing it as we go. I like that instead of just the continual, and that's part of the also probably benefit of having this shared between other municipalities or other groups. So yeah, I can definitely see, go along with it. So
Great.
Further thoughts?
I'll just say that from my time as a training and development specialist, I was familiar with CPS and I've actually taken some courses through them, and they're really in that capacity excellent. So this, and from what you all have learned about what they can do for you or what they can do for us, it sounds like a really good fit. So I can totally support this.
Excellent. Thank you. Doug?
Yeah, I can support this also for most of the reasons I've already been stated, but I think the other reason I like to throw out is that both of you, Adam, you and Rebecca, both feel comfortable with them and you have to work with them. And I think that's one of the key aspects. You have to feel comfortable. You almost have to like the people you're working with, as long as they have the knowledge and the expertise, which it sounds like they do. I think that's another key factor for me, but I can support this also moving forward.
Ditto.
Here, here. All right. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for authorization of the town manager to execute a 3-year professional service agreement with CPS HR Consulting.
Second?
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ravazio.
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Great. Thank you. That is that. So we'll move on to item 7, which is council reports, and we'll start with Adam.
Great. Thank you, council members. I have a few reports for you today. First off, I just wanted to let you know that last night or yesterday evening, we launched, if RJ was here, I'd let him do this, but he along with Todd Lando from CMFA, PG&E was there as well, launched the Lower Christmas Tree Hill Undergrounding and Evacuation Improvement Project, which stems directly from our climate adaptation assessment. And as you know, we've done a lot of work on that on the Bay side. This is sort of a parallel effort that is now going to be focused on Lower Christmas Tree Hill and really trying to figure out the best options for undergrounding some of the poles at the bottom of the hill and widen the road where possible. That's obviously a throat there, and just make working with CMFA and others designing the project, not funding it yet, but designing a project and really working with the community there to come up with the best solutions for evacuation down the hill. And it was fairly well attended. It's on the website for folks who may have missed it, but got a lot of positive feedback last night for the workshop. So that's at Corte Madera adapts.org/hillside. And then you can get to the video. It's already up on the website, last night's meeting. Somewhat related, just letting you all know, this Thursday, our entire senior management team will be conducting a tabletop exercise at the Office of Emergency Management. This is essentially training on how to use our emergency management facility, the EOC up there. The first half of the day is just introducing ourselves to the various different resources. And then the second half of the day is really going to 3 different scenarios related to earthquakes and how sort of understanding our roles and responsibilities in such an event. So we'll have also our Fire Chief Ruben Martin, as well as Central Rhode Police joining us as well, which I think is one of the things that I'm excited about, sort of making sure our staff knows how to, we know CMFA and CMPA are they're on it, but it's how do we interact really with them and our community and council and so on during such an event, and communications in particular, I think is a key role. And what are our responsibilities in the scenario we'll be going through with the earthquake event. As you know, that's our EOC up at Los Gamos and San Rafael. So we will be, if you might get an out of office reply on Thursday as a result, just a heads up there. I do want to mention, you may have picked up on this in the Chronicles, but we have had a recent playground safety inspection, which turned up some deficiencies at our town park playground that needed immediate attention. And so we recently switched our playground inspector, and I think this was a much more thorough inspection, which resulted in some category 5, just things we needed to address immediately. And so we blocked off certain sections of not entire sections, certain equipment, I should say, that were of concern. And just a heads up, that's going to be something we'll need to talk about in terms of next year's work plan and how to address. But for the time being, we're entering into winter, and I think it's not a heavily used time, but it's been publicized in the chronicles, and it's not doing like yellow tape around the whole thing. It's very targeted in terms of what we needed, equipment we needed to close down. And then lastly, I'll just say we have received, and we'll definitely give you more information on this in the coming days, but we did receive a revised application at 240 Tamil Vista Boulevard for a new development. It's actually may look fairly similar, but it's not 200. I think it was 240 units of senior housing, something like 70 parking spaces. This one is proposed to be about 98 or 99 units of 100% affordable as well. 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom units with about twice, I think 160 something parking spaces as well. So you'll hear more. Amy Lyle will be giving an update, and then we'll be similarly asking for scheduling some meetings with the council interested to move that forward, and then obviously following up with a workshop as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We will do council reports now, starting with Fred.
To come on that, I think. Also 11/7 at night.
Your mic on.
Want me to repeat, or am I good?
You're good.
Thank you. You didn't want to hear it again, huh? All in unison. 11/7, I attended Ross Valley Paramedic Authority meeting there. A couple things with that. We did get a draft review / deployment study. Without going in a lot of details, two things that came out of that is one recommendation is leave Medic 18 in Ross. So that's a good thing for Ross. And the second part to that is there's a number of recommendations you're making with respect to how RVPA is organized, including the JPA, how Central Marin Fire ties into that, and Corte Madera and all that kind of stuff. Those recommendations are still TBD type thing. I mean, they are what they are. It's just we have another special meeting on this Thursday coming up, and it looks like they may be split into two, short-term and long-term. So that's the update on that. 11/12, I attended Marin Transit Board meeting there. The one thing there is 1075 East Francisco Boulevard. We closed escrow on that property. So that's going to be a new bus maintenance electrification yard. That's a multi-year project though. 11/14, I attended Central Marin Police Authority meeting. A couple large ticket items there. Back in November, we gave direction to staff, Chief Norton, that when they have patrol cars, if they can replace them with EV ones. Chief Norton and his staff did a lot of research. There's problems with Teslas, but actually we approved the purchase of 2 EV patrol cars. They're Chevy Blazers. I think they'll be delivered within the next 2 to 3 weeks or so.
Oh,
yeah.
Super cool.
The plan is over the next 5 to 6 years. Right now, I think there's 15 patrol cars. Over the next 5 to 6 years, the plan is to replace those 15 or so as they come out of service with 20 EVs. So they'll go totally EV. The second part that we approved that night also was approval of them putting in 23 EV charging stations at the police station on Doherty. So that's going to move forward also. It was decided to go ahead and do 23 because they're getting rebates from TAM and also MCE. They're afraid if they don't do it now, they may lose those rebates down the road. So they figure we'll just do all 23 now. And again, 5 or 6 years from now, the plan is 10 of those patrol cars would be charging during the day while the others are out on patrol, and then they would just flip them. So that's the plan. So that's really good news that they're able to go EV on those. Central Marin Fire is not there yet. I bring it up on Ross Valley Paramedic with the ambulances also. They're just not there yet. 11/14, I attend also Central Marin Fire along with Rosa. And then Pat, myself, Adam, and Vesa, our broker, we've been meeting every Wednesday at 2:30 on the Intergenerational Center. So it's not out of sight, out of mind. It definitely is in sight, in mind. So we're trying to do a couple of different ways to get that up and going again. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Charles.
Because of health reasons, I wasn't able to attend those two meetings, but I was very excited about the electrification of the police force. And on the fire one, it is the larger engines, it's much more difficult, but the trucks and other service vehicles they have talked about, and we'll probably look forward to electrifying those as we move forward, I think. And I think Chief Norton's strategy is well informed, and he definitely vetted it a lot. It was an interesting about the Chevy Blazers. There's only one vendor. It's in Elk Grove, and the lowest cost, and also the fears of batteries and their life cycle and everything. Like, because of the nature of the wear and tear, they constantly are replacing, recycling those, right? So like, definitely it won't compromise the ability for the police to provide services through vehicles, right? And the only other thing I had spoken to Lorena about, and I don't know if it got mentioned, was he's getting rebates for the chargers, but I thought we also, as public entities, can get rebates from TAM for the vehicles themselves as fleet cars. So I just wanted to make sure he knew or was aware of that, and if that was applicable there too.
I'll circle back with him on that.
I did ask him, sorry, I feel like I'm just answering a question that normally we don't do, but I did ask the question and he said that they're only allowed to apply for twice or something like that. So in this case, he wasn't able to apply for additional funding for TAM for that.
See, that's where I'd say our TAM rep should probably lobby that if they're ultimately going to replace two every year or two, that really it's a bulk buy or bulk funding. So the funding request might only come after a while, but they need to be able to reimburse them for each vehicle, or else it's not really a fleet replacement. So.
And I'm sorry, I just wanted to think both at Central Marin Police and also Central Marin Fire Police Council meetings. Chief Norton and also Chief Martin recognized Charles for his service and his time on both those councils. They both said it was greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I was really sad I couldn't make it. It's health. So, yeah. And then also, I wasn't able to do any of the fun openings, but we've had an amazing amount of new businesses open lately, and with the Chamber of Commerce. And so I look forward to hearing those reports too.
Just on that, I think there's supposed to be one tomorrow. I don't know if the rain's, I think it's still on at the Evergreen Hotel tomorrow at noon. So hopefully we can show up with your umbrellas and boots, rain boots, I guess. And if I can, since we were on the topic of EVs, I'm sorry, but I should mention also the town is replacing our duty truck and a couple other vehicles, an SUV that the Park and Rec had with new EV trucks as well. So I think we have 3 on order.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Rosa.
Yes, as mentioned, I was at the Fire Council meeting where we approved the MOUs for the battalion chiefs, much deserved salary increases. So happy we did that. And also, I just want to recognize the hard work that Vice Mayor Pat did for the volunteer appreciation dinner. It was really fun and the food was really good. And she had to jump in and think quick when the caterer originally had forgotten it was the night to do it. And she quickly got Marin Joe's to bring us such good pasta. It was so good. And then we still ended up with a turkey dinner. So wow, that was pretty amazing. So, and that's all I got.
Excellent. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, that volunteer appreciation dinner, I get the feeling it's going to become known as the volunteer appreciation feast now that we've served them a first course and a salad and then the turkey dinner. So it was fun. I didn't have much. I just have a little celebrity report. I got to meet Gavin Newsom on Friday night at his wife's big gala in the city, and he was so excited to talk about Corte Madera and Larkspur. Vice Mayor Catherine Way was there, and he actually shouted out, "We got Corte Madera and Larkspur in the house." And then he talked about his days at Joe Wag Field, saying that when he was 11 and 12, it was absolutely the best life ever. So eat your heart out, Beverly Hills, the Twin Cities in Marin is the place to live. So I invited him to come to town hall and he said, yeah, but now we'll work on when and all of that. And then the only other thing I have coming up that's important, if anyone has any ideas, the MCCM legislative group is meeting virtually with Pro Tem Senator Mike McGuire on Monday, this coming Monday. And everyone's looking for ideas for how do I say this nicely, how we protect ourselves from initiatives that may be forthcoming from our new federal government regarding climate, immigration, workers' rights, reproductive rights, and so forth. So they're really brainstorming now to figure out how to make the best defense a good offense. So that happens next Monday, if anyone has any ideas. And that's all.
Thank you very much. And I just have a few quick things. On November 6th, I attended a CMS Central Marin Sanitation Agency ad hoc committee meeting. That's the group that's working on developing the proposal for the potential Santerfell sanitary shared services agreement with CMSA there. The following day, on the 7th, we had a full CMSA board meeting. On November 8th, we had the Our House ribbon cutting, which was exciting. Glad that they're open now. And then later that night, I also had a great time and marveled at Pat's resilience at the volunteer appreciation dinner.
Oh, come on.
So it was a good week. All right. And with that, that concludes our council reports. Do we have any comments on the draft agenda for the next meeting?
I do, just one. I'm sorry, Adam, I didn't bring this up sooner, but I'm just wondering, all the other commissions, committees have been doing some preparatory work to talk about the work plan in January. And I'm just wondering if sometime in December, or maybe even that first meeting in January, because the work plan meeting is always during the day and people can't make it, is there a way that we could take public input? Like, if you have ideas of what you'd like us to prioritize next year, it'd be nice to hear from them before we have that work plan meeting. So I'm wondering if we can do sort of what the other, not that we necessarily need to talk within ourselves about what needs to be on the work plan. I just want to make sure we're reaching out enough to the community on that one, since we're so good at reaching out.
I'll just say, I mean, that's a good comment. I just, the way that it's working right now is all of the committees and commissions are sort of filtering up, or ideas are through public meetings.
Mm-hmm.
They're having discussions about which are the priorities in, for example, the Park and Rec Master Plan or other priorities. Planning Commission had this discussion at their last meeting. So we should be those should be filtering up through staff into the discussion at our strategic planning session in January, which I know we have to start getting a date set on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those are public meetings being discussed at that level with individual subject matter. So I think that's how we've done it in the past. I think it's worked pretty well.
Okay. I mean, I know we're reaching out through all those committees, so maybe that is sufficient. I mean, I'm not saying we need to do a full-blown public hearing before we discuss the work plan, but I just want to make sure we're doing the outreach.
Yeah. Well, and then my intention is the second meeting in December is to sort of have a review of the work that's done in 2024
Nice.
that we've done, which may allow the opportunity for folks to participate at
Great.
that meeting and sort of what's next.
That, just to discuss it and let's discuss the work plan 24 that sounds great. Great.
All right. Good stuff. Well, with that, we are adjourned.